First up, we're in Springfield, Massachusetts for an arraignment hearing. 30-year-old Jose Santiago has been charged with first-degree murder for allegedly stabbing his girlfriend to death on her 25th birthday. Santiago and the victim, a mother of 4, reportedly had an on-again, off-again relationship and were celebrating her birthday with a group of friends at a nightclub when they began arguing. Later that night, an intoxicated Santiago allegedly stabbed the victim more than 100 times inside her home. As Santiago is led into a courtroom with the victim's family members present, the only sound that can be heard is the click of cameras. Then suddenly, the silence is broken. Before Santiago reaches his seat, deputies intercept a man rushing towards him. While the officer's attention is on him, another man finds his way around the outside of the seating area and is able to get a punch in on Santiago before deputies wrestle him down and rush the defendant out into a hallway. As officials try to get control of the situation, the courtroom's clear. The assailants would later be identified as the victim's father and stepfather. Both men were charged with disrupting court and assault and battery of a court officer. The charges were eventually dropped. It would take 2 more years before Jose Santiago was ultimately found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Next, we go to a sentencing in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The defendant is 18-year-old Brendan Wazinski, who's charged with impersonating a sheriff's deputy. 6 months earlier, Wazinski was driving an unmarked car with a police siren when he pulled over a driver for speeding. Albuquerque police officer Danny Anzo came upon the scene and, thinking something off about the situation, decided to check it out.
Can I talk to him for a minute? What do you work for?
Burlington Insurance Office.
Oh, okay.
I know, I'm under-equipped.
Okay. Do you have an ID with you?
I mean, this is all I got. I mean, like I said, I'm under-equipped. I was just heading over there to the courthouse.
It's a courthouse for what?
To get my crap.
Okay.
The wannabe cop sticks to his story.
I know, it makes no sense. I caught him going 120 down I-40.
The officer has Wazinski hang around while he checks on his story.
San Juan Pity.
While he waits for a response, Anzo casually chats with Wazinski. One officer to sort of another.
And I'm not here to mess with you, man. It's just the thing is, yeah, he was speeding, dude. You could have called it in. And, because if you get into shooting, you're
right.
All right, man.
I understand.
Right.
This, for starters, I know this looks really bad.
Right.
This looks really bad. This screams whacker.
Right. How long you been on?
About 3 years.
Okay. I've been on for like 13 years. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but you need to be a little bit more careful, all right?
Yes, sir.
So just do me a favor, hang tight for a second, okay?
Yes, sir.
It sounds like the officer might be letting him go. Not so fast. Anzo requests a supervisor from the Bernalillo Sheriff's Office to come down to the scene. In the meantime, he puts Wazinski in the back of his cruiser.
Do you have anything on you, man? Any weapons or anything? Okay, that's fine. Just have a seat, all right? All right.
It looks like this bizarre game of good cop, fake cop may be coming to an end. So Wazinski comes clean.
Can we talk real quick?
Yeah, give me 1 second. What's up, man?
All right. I'm just going to be straight up honest with you. I'm not a cop.
Okay.
I'm just going to be
Where'd you get that badge from?
I bought it offline.
Okay. Do me a favor, stay in here, okay? For a second.
After discussing the strange situation with his sergeant, Anzo makes the next move.
Back in my car. Hey, Brandon, step out of the vehicle for a second, man. Okay, face the vehicle. At this point right now, you are being under arrest. You understand?
Before heading downtown, Wazinski sheds a few tears in the back seat.
So I need you to lean back a little bit. Okay.
Can I please help my wife?
I'll give you, when we get to the substation, we'll give you a call, okay?
Wazinski's formally charged with impersonating an officer, a misdemeanor, and a second officer takes him off to jail.
Yeah, buddy. Can't be pretending to be a cop.
Yeah, I know, I'm stupid.
Lesson learned, right?
As they head downtown, the reality of the situation kicks in for this counterfeit cop.
It's one hell of a thought to know that in about 2 minutes I f***ed my life pretty damn good.
Now, as he stands before a very real judge, instead of fighting the charge, Wazinski pleads no contest. He's sentenced to 1 year of probation. The judge also rules he can't carry any firearms or handcuffs and must undergo a psychiatric evaluation.
Because I do not want any kind of reoffense in this kind of case. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
But this sham sheriff story doesn't end there. Wazinski violates his probation by failing to get that psych evaluation. But he gets a break when the judge gives him an extra 2 weeks to complete the evaluation. When told of his extension, Wazinski presses his luck.
I can try the best I can, Your Honor. I mean, I have honestly a lot going on right now, and it's stressful. But I will try my hardest to get it done.
Okay, so just to let you know, we all have a lot going on, and it is very stressful for everyone, but this is very important, and I'm not going to give you longer than that.
Wazinski did eventually complete his evaluation and was able to avoid jail time. And hopefully his days of impersonating an officer are over.
This looks really bad. This seems whacker.
As for the driver Wazinski pulled over, he was, of course, free to go. Next, we head to Oklahoma City for the trial of Daniel Holtzclaw. The former police officer is charged with 36 counts of rape, sodomy, battery, and a number of other charges. Over a dozen women accused Holtzclaw of sexual assault, committed mostly during traffic stops in poorer neighborhoods around Oklahoma City. The accusers typically had minor offenses on their records. Investigators first questioned Holtzclaw after Janie Liggins, a 58-year-old grandmother, claimed the officer forced her to perform oral sex during a traffic stop. Holtzclaw denied any sexual misconduct.
You never saw her pull her pants down.
No, I didn't.
Why do you think she's making this up?
I don't know.
Surveillance footage obtained by investigators showed Liggins in the officer's vehicle for over 10 minutes. Holtzclaw denied any sexual misconduct.
Do you recall putting your penis in her mouth?
I don't.
Would you recall that if you did it?
If I did, yeah.
But Holtzclaw insisted the two were just talking and held firm to his story.
We can fall on the sword
Okay.
and say I screwed up or something, but if we say we didn't do it, we didn't do it, we didn't do it, and then the DNA comes back and says he did it, then we have a huge problem.
Right. So I'm sticking with my story.
Okay.
Things get worse for Holtzclaw when the officers mention a second alleged victim.
Let's switch up for a second. You had another girl, okay? You probably not necessarily going to remember the name, but her name is, okay? Black female. And she's claiming the same thing. The exact same thing.
But again, Holtzclaw sticks to his story.
You know, I'm a good officer. I don't. That's not me. It's not me.
When more women came forward with similar claims, Holtzclaw was fired from the Oklahoma City Police Department. And after a victim's DNA was found on Holtzclaw's clothing, he was officially booked. He pleaded not guilty to all charges.
All rise. The Honorable Timothy R. Henderson presiding.
During the month-long trial, Holtzclaw chose not to testify. Several of his accusers did, including Liggins. After 4 days of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict.
Has this jury reached a verdict? All right, would you hand the verdict forms to my bailiff, please?
Holtzclaw fidgets nervously as Judge Henderson quietly reads the 36 counts before him. If found guilty, the 29-year-old could spend the rest of his life in prison.
Verdict, count 1, sexual battery. We, the jury, impaneled and sworn in the above entitled cause, do upon our oaths find as follows. Defendant is guilty of the crime of sexual battery and set punishment of 8 years. Count 4, procuring lewd exhibition. Defendant is guilty. Count 8, defendant is guilty of the crime of forcible oral sodomy.
Of the 36 charges, Holtzclaw was found guilty of 18, including the most serious.
Count 11, rape in the first degree. Defendant is guilty.
With each guilty verdict, the one-time college linebacker appeared to sink deeper into his chair.
Guilty, guilty, guilty.
In total, Holtzclaw was convicted on 5 counts of rape and sentenced to 263 years in prison. He appealed the ruling, but the verdict and sentence were upheld. Next, we're at the Huntington Convention Center in Cleveland, Ohio, where during the COVID-19 pandemic, the Cuyahoga County Court moved some of its hearings to alleviate crowding at the courthouse. On the docket today is a triple homicide case that drew national attention because of the alleged killer's family ties. 26-year-old Tevin Biles Thomas is the older brother of 4-time Olympic gold medalist Simone Biles. He was charged with a long list of crimes including murder, felonious assault, and perjury following a shooting that left 3 men dead. This police camera footage shows the moment officers responded to the call of shots fired during a New Year's Eve party.
Stick to the right, boys.
Inside one room, 2 men are found dead from gunshot wounds. And on a stairway below,
Sir! Sir!
another clinging to life.
He's shot. I don't know, there's blood everywhere.
The man would later die at the hospital. In the days that followed, Tevin Biles Thomas was arrested and charged based on the accounts of 2 eyewitnesses who claimed he was the shooter. The initial prosecution of Biles Thomas ended in a mistrial when jurors were mistakenly given legal briefs containing sensitive information. Now at a second trial, with victims' family members sitting in a makeshift gallery, his attorneys filed a motion to dismiss due to a lack of evidence. The defense cited that neither eyewitness actually saw Biles Thomas fire a weapon. One was only 75% sure he was the shooter based on the clothing he was wearing at the time.
In viewing the evidence in the light most favorable to the state, it is insufficient to sustain a conviction. The motion is granted as to all counts.
With the charges dismissed, Biles Thomas will walk out a free man if he makes it out of the hearing. After the judge dismisses the case,
the motion is granted as to all counts.
The mother of one of the victims makes a rush towards the defendant. Several officers intercept the distraught mom and wrestle her toward the exit. After derailing her attack, officers steady the woman as she begins to cry.
Kill my baby. You know he killed my baby.
She's eventually escorted out of the court area.
She was 75%. Stop. Calm down. Hey, calm down. Breathe.
But she's not the only person upset with the outcome of the case.
Man. Come on, sir.
You know you killed my
Sir, come on.
One of the victim's uncles also calls out Biles Thomas as he's escorted out of the court area.
You a hoe, man.
Come on.
Man, I swear to God, man.
Sir, don't make no move.
You
Come
a
on.
man.
Leave it. Just leave it. Let's go. Come on. Let's go. Come on, let's go.
Tevin Biles Thomas walked out of court a free man with all charges against him dismissed. The victim's mother was not charged.
I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna kill you.
It's my death sentence today.
Next, we head to Union County, Ohio for the verdict in the trial of 49-year-old Anthony Redding. He's charged with 1 count of felonious assault. Redding allegedly punched his girlfriend in the face, and the blow was so vicious it resulted in her losing an eye. He claimed it was self-defense and pleaded not guilty. This is potentially Redding's 3rd conviction for assault. If found guilty, he could be looking at 18 years in prison.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the court's informed that you have reached a verdict. Is that correct?
This jury finds the defendant, Anthony Wayne Redding, is guilty of the charge of felonious assault.
While the jury heads home, Redding prepares to learn the terms of his sentence.
Ladies and gentlemen, have a good day. Thank you once again.
Please rise.
Judge Donald Fraser hasn't even started reading the sentence. Redding is already fired up.
Yes, that's all I got. Satan.
A deputy approaches to calm Redding down, but he's got something he wants to get off his chest.
Anthony, I can make things more better. Right. We still got sentencing to go through.
It's too small anyway.
Before he goes any further, the judge steps in.
No reason for you to be acting this way.
Come on, let's go.
I think it's appropriate that the deputies put you in restraints before the court imposes sentence.
Give me 18. Yes. Yes. Small. And like that.
Have a seat.
The judge first allows the prosecutor to make a statement.
The state believes that his conduct, dating back to at least 2008, warrants the most strict and stringent sentence available.
Shut the up. Piece of shit. Come on, give me 18.
The judge asks Redding if he has anything to say.
It's not good. I did not intentionally hit shit. And this will be ruination of my life. If you want to stick me in, there's no sense in living. That's all I can say. You can go ahead and do what you want.
Finally, it's Judge Fraser's turn to announce his decision.
All right. Well, the court finds that there's no genuine remorse shown here. The court further finds that a maximum sentence is warranted. The total prison sentence imposed is 18 years.
Redding receives 18 years in a state prison and won't be eligible for release until 2037. And he'll be 68 years old.
That's the order of the court. Thank you.
That's it for this edition of Court Case. I'm Dan Abrams. Thanks for watching. Hi everyone, I'm Dan Abrams, and this is Court Case.
You ready to take your play?
I'll kill it all you live. I hope you die in prison as well.
First up, we're in Volusia County, Florida, for the arraignment of 33-year-old Xavier Cummings. He's been charged with escape, fleeing and attempting to elude, armed burglary of a dwelling, 2 counts of possession of a weapon by a convicted felon, 2 counts of grand theft of firearms, and 2 counts of grand theft of a motor vehicle. So how did he rack up that laundry list of crimes? Well, just watch and see.
He's on the move, going north on 95.
This cruiser is not being driven by an officer in pursuit. It's actually Xavier Cummings behind the wheel of a stolen police unit.
Guys, give me your speed. We're about 105, 110, trying to catch up.
Cummings stole the cruiser after police confronted him while responding to a disturbance call at a nearby motel, and he hasn't looked back. Officers try a pit maneuver by bumping his rear end, but Cummings is able to steer out of it.
Every unit behind us, stop traffic. We got plenty of...
Seconds later, another bump at over 100 miles an hour sends him spinning off the highway.
10-3, someone just hit him into the woods. Car in the woods, can't see the driver. Air 1 does not have eyes on the suspect.
More officers arrive on the scene, including a canine unit, as a team prepares to approach the vehicle.
Hey, heads up, he's trying to drive the car out of the woods.
Outnumbered and outgunned, it appears Cummings will have no choice but to surrender. But apparently, no one told him that. Cummings can be seen here making a break for it. Right to the driver's seat of another police unit.
Hey, get behind the car! Are you kidding me?
Nope, not kidding. And just like that, he's on the road again.
Follow that car, you got another car.
Up the interstate, more officers are staged and prepare to deploy a spike strip.
The only vehicle coming at you, center lane, blue lights on. Only vehicle, about 3 seconds out.
The officer's toss is perfectly timed, and after running over the spike strip, Cummings' car begins slowing down.
Okay, vehicle is smoking, going into the inside lane. He's braking for the median, guys. He's braking for the median.
But now, as officers prepare to engage Cummings for a second time, they have a new concern.
I need to know if there's any guns in that car that he just stole in the front. He said, yes, there probably is.
With Cummings now possibly having access to police weapons inside the vehicle, the situation continues to escalate.
Car 1, make sure you get some long guns up here, too.
As 3 officers approach the SUV, they find Cummings face down outside the vehicle. For the 60-mile cross-county high-speed chase, Xavier Cummings was hit with a litany of charges, including escape, 2 counts of grand theft of a motor vehicle.
On those charges, I find probable cause on all counts.
But Cummings has just one question.
What's bond man?
No bond on
No bond, how's that?
But before the judge can answer, Cummings gets the last word.
No, I didn't talk. I need a statement. Executive Department comes to see Cap T, Cap H, Cap E, Cap D, Lord, KPI, moving 9, help!
Xavier Cummings is currently being held without bond while he awaits trial.
Help! Help! I need!
Next, we head to Burlington, Vermont for the trial of James Burke. The 51-year-old was charged with sexual assault for allegedly drugging and raping a 21-year-old homeless woman in his mobile home. The incident occurred 6 years earlier, but Burke's accused by the state of deliberately stalling the legal process by, among other things, filing more than 150 pretrial motions. Once the trial begins, Burke, who's representing himself, continues to disrupt the proceedings with loud outbursts and wild accusations.
This is the most corrupt attorney in the country.
On the stand, Burke continues to attempt his bullying tactics by attacking the victim's testimony.
That was a complete fabrication to back up this bogus date rape drug allegation, which is, off the wall.
Burke then doubles down on his defense that the sex with the 21-year-old was consensual.
Rubbing her shoulder, giving her back rub and stuff, and this is just to break the ice with her to see if she would resist me, because if she was going to, I was going to stop and not mess with her. See if she would resist me.
And finally, Burke mentions how he'll go about collecting evidence should he ever find himself in the same position in the future.
I'm gonna get myself a video camera, and from now on, I got, like I said, an address book full of girlfriends, and they're gonna be secretly videotaped from now on, and just to cover my ass.
Now, with the jury done deliberating, Burke enters the courtroom, toting a box of legal documents emblazoned with the message, 100% innocent. And as the judge calls for the jury's verdict,
does the jury find Mr. Burke guilty or not guilty?
He takes a moment to straighten his signage and then seemingly appears to smirk with confidence as the big moment finally arrives.
Does the jury find Mr. Garth guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Is that the verdict of all of you?
Yes. Burke seems a bit confused by the verdict at first, and then refuses to accept it.
We will be appealing this case. That's an incorrect verdict. I have evidence to prove myself innocent right here in this box. We're appealing this case to the Vermont Supreme Court.
You may do that.
You set me up for conviction.
5 months later, Burke is back in front of Judge Matthew Katz, this time to learn his sentence.
The sentence is 18 to 20 years to serve.
This is a travesty of justice.
Burke's outburst in the background gets him removed from the courtroom, but not before he gets in a few choice words for Judge Katz.
A miscarriage of justice. You're a piece of I'm going to write the Iranian embassy.
James Burke would later appeal his conviction, but it was denied by the Vermont Supreme Court. Burke's earliest chance for release is 2031, when he would be 71 years old. On a previous episode of Court Cam, we featured this story showing an unruly defendant being taken down and tased by 2 Sedgwick County, Kansas deputies. One of those officers was Brett Seacat. At the time, he was praised for his quick action subduing the defendant. But 7 years later, he's back in the courtroom wearing a different kind of uniform. Seacat was found guilty of first-degree murder and aggravated arson for shooting and killing his 34-year-old wife, Vashti Seacat, then setting their house on fire as part of a cover-up scheme. The prosecution claimed the murder plot was put in motion just days after Vashti Seacat filed for divorce. Brett Seacat maintained his innocence, claiming his wife had actually set fire to their home before taking her own life. The jury, however, did not buy it.
Count 1, murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Brett T. Seacat guilty of murder in the first degree.
Now it's sentencing.
Mr. Seacat, if you would stand, please, sir.
When given a chance to speak, 37-year-old Seacat begins a nearly 20-minute dissertation systematically attacking members of the victim's family, beginning with her father.
Clint Forrest, you took the podium and addressed the entire courtroom as Vashti's father, but you have never been Vashti's father. Ever. I spent 19 years trying to protect Vashti from the damage that family had done, and in the end, I failed.
Next, he singles out his brother-in-law in the gallery.
He talks about his beloved sister, but he never treated her like a beloved sister. See, Vashti told me what he did to her when she was 22 years old.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. It's inappropriate. This is supposed to be his time to speak about his actions, and I think this is improper.
Judge Larry Solomon agrees to put an end to Seacat's disparaging claims against the victim's family. But after redirecting him, he becomes the new target.
I understand, even though I'm the one being sentenced, this day does not belong to me. This day was meant for people who made sure it would happen. This day belongs to you, Judge Solomon. This is your day. This is the day you get to take your place in front of the cameras and pass sentence on a man you worked so hard to convict. Go ahead and pass the sentence that you hope will get the biggest headline. Go ahead and pass sentence you think will land you a spot on the Kansas Supreme Court. Go ahead and pass the sentence that guarantees your spot in hell. Because the sentence you believe will profit you most in this life is going to damn you in the next.
Seacat may have gotten in some verbal shots, but it's Judge Solomon who gets the final say.
Your guilt in this case was overwhelming. Evidence to support your defense of suicide was totally unbelievable and virtually unsupported by any credible evidence. Your statement this morning confirms to me that you live in some sort of bizarre alternate reality. It bears zero reality to the case that was tried and the evidence that was presented in this matter. And we do know that you thought you were smarter than law enforcement, you thought you were smarter than fire officials, and you thought you were smarter than 12 jurors who heard this case. And in the end, of course, we know that you weren't smarter than any of them. One of the victim's family asked me to show you no mercy, and I don't intend to show you any mercy. You didn't show Vashti any mercy.
And with that, Judge Solomon hands down the maximum allowable sentence on all charges, totaling 31 years to life in prison.
You mentioned the spotlight had been on this case for quite some time. The spotlight wasn't on me, Mr. Seacat, it was on you. And now, thankfully, it goes out.
Stand your ground. Stand your ground.
Next, we go to Cleveland, Ohio for a bond hearing. The defendant is 32-year-old Antonio Swanson. He's been charged with 10 felonies, including murder, aggravated murder, and attempted murder. Swanson allegedly shot and killed his half-sister, Juanita Hill, over a dispute involving a car. The defendant also took aim at Hill's boyfriend, as well as his own father. Both men were uninjured. Swanson's a repeat offender with convictions dating back to 2006. He's making his first court appearance today in front of Judge Suzanne Sweeney. As he lumbers forward, Swanson begins making seemingly nonsensical comments.
Good morning, Mr. Torres. No duct tape. Stand your ground. No retreat.
Sir?
Make my bond and chill you.
I'm going to ask that you be quiet.
Then he begins making remarks about his bond.
I'm just making a request. You make it $1 million, I'm paying that. And I'm getting out.
Thank you. Mr. Torres.
Thank you, Your Honor. My understanding is that he is demanding, so the date will be November 7th.
November 7th?
As the prosecutor, Jose Torres, goes over the case, the defendant makes a series of hand gestures. Then he challenges the state to increase his bond amount.
The state will ask for a $5 million bond in this case.
Ain't that $5 billion? $5 million.
Statements in the court.
That's disrespectful.
In regards to the bond and the threats to the prosecutor.
I made promises.
Those promises were also made in previous cases. Now he's here because of this new case where not only he killed his 26-year-old sister.
She stole my car.
The defendant shot her once, she went to the ground, and the defendant went to where she was, shot her twice as she laid on the ground, and that was done in front of her father.
Who gives a He ain't never bought me nothing. She stole my car. Told her to give it back. Oh, they shot at me too. Stand your ground. No retreat.
The judge then decides to go beyond the state's requested bond.
Actually, sir, based on your request, this bond's going to be $15 million.
No, billions.
For surety.
Make me look good.
A few weeks later, Swanson is brought to a different court for his arraignment.
Mr. Swanson, have you received a copy of your indictment now?
Yes, sir.
Have you had a chance to look at it?
It's ridiculous, sir.
No. The question was, did you have a chance to look at it? You want to enter a plea?
Not guilty by the consent.
Okay. Well, we'll enter your plea of not guilty at this time. Not guilty by reason of insanity by court rule has to be in writing.
Because the case was moved to a different court, Swanson will receive a new bond amount.
State Wire requests a bond of at least $2 million for this defendant based on the heinousness of the acts that he committed in this case against his sister and his father and another individual.
Make it 3 then. I don't care.
At the court's discretion. $2 million bond to cash surety your property. Sir, your first pre-trial is a week from today on the 25th of November at 9 a.m., all right?
Going to trial. I'm never going to pre-trial.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a good day.
Swanson's case was assigned to the mental health docket and is currently in a county jail awaiting trial. Next, we're in Houston, Texas, and the trial of Susan Wright. The 27-year-old housewife and mother of 2 was charged with first-degree murder after she admitted to stabbing her husband more than 190 times and burying his body in their backyard. Wright's defense team argued the murder was an act of self-defense. The culmination of years of alleged physical and mental abuse she says she suffered at the hands of her husband.
He threw her down, grabbed her by the arms, and began punching her, and he kicked her with his bare feet.
The prosecution, however, claimed the killing was motivated by money, specifically her husband's $200,000 life insurance policy.
This case is not about self-defense. This case is about selfishness.
During the trial, lurid details were revealed that on the night of the murder, Wright seduced her husband with the promise of sex and tied him to the bed using neckties and a bathrobe sash.
Jeffrey was nude. He had all of his clothes off. The evidence will show you that Susan Wright lit candles in the bedroom.
Those candles were then used to drip hot wax on Jeffrey Wright's genitals. Then the prosecution argued the sadistic play soon turned deadly. Wright grabbed a hunting knife and began stabbing her husband in the neck and head with enough force to break off the tip of the blade. But even in a case full of graphic details, the prosecution dropped the ultimate bombshell with the introduction of state's evidence number 56. The actual blood-stained mattress from the Wrights' bedroom. Then, in front of an already stunned courtroom, prosecuting attorney Kelly Siegler has a colleague tied to the bed and then climbs on top of him to assume the position of Susan Wright.
And I attack at the head area first.
Just feet away from the live demonstration, Wright can be seen sobbing. And after an 8-day trial, jurors reached a verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Susan Lucille Wright, guilty of murder as charged in the indictment.
The victim's brother and sister-in-law would get custody of the couple's 2 children. And later at sentencing, the victim's father tearfully recounted the horror his son suffered the night of his murder.
It's unbelievable. I mean, how can a human being do what she did to my son? Stab him in the eyeballs, but he's awake. I can't believe he did. She's evil.
Susan Wright was sentenced to 25 years in prison for the first-degree murder of her husband. Her sentence would later be reduced to 20 years. And in 2020, after serving just 16 of them, Wright was released on parole.
That's it for this edition of Court Cam. I'm Dan Abrams. Thanks for watching.